Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the human battlecruiser Warhammer. His eyes were fixed on the large screen in front of him. The screen showed endless stars and empty space, but something was wrong. The ship's sensors had picked up a strange signal. It was coming from deep space, 37 light-years away from Earth. Lieutenant Katie Sullivan walked toward Jake. She carried a small datapad in her hands. Her face looked serious and worried. She handed the datapad to Jake without saying anything. Jake looked at the screen and felt his heart beat faster. What he saw made him angry and scared at the same time. It was a distress call, but it was not from humans. The message was in an alien language. The computer translated it quickly. The message was from the Veltani. They were a peaceful species that loved to trade and make friends. Humans had met them only twice before. The message said that their colony was under attack. Someone was destroying their homes on a planet called Theta Principia. Jake read the message 2 times. His jaw was tight with anger. He remembered the Veltani well. Years ago, a terrible disease called the Crimson Plague had spread through human colonies. Many people were dying. The Veltani had helped them. They brought medicine and supplies. They asked for nothing in return. They were good people. They were not warriors. They were traders and teachers. Lieutenant Greg Patterson sat at the weapons control station. He looked up at Jake with urgent eyes. His voice was calm but serious. "Commander, I am reading huge energy signals from Theta Principia. There are many ships there. They are firing heavy weapons. Whoever is attacking the Veltani is not holding back. They are trying to kill everyone." Jake turned to face Ensign Claire Ramsey. She was the communications officer. Her fingers were already moving fast on her console. Blue light from the screen made her face glow in the dark bridge. "Send an urgent message to Earth Command right now. Include all the sensor data and the distress call. Then contact Vice Admiral Lauren Hayes. Tell her we are going to help the Veltani. We are moving to intercept the attackers." Claire stopped for just a moment. Going to full combat alert without clear orders from Earth was dangerous. It could end Jake's career. But she saw the determination in his eyes. She nodded and sent the message. "Message sent, Commander. We should get a response from the Admiral in about 1 hour." That hour felt like forever. The crew worked quietly. Everyone was tense. They prepared the Warhammer for battle. They turned on all weapon systems. They checked the shields. They pushed the ship's reactor to maximum power. Humanity had learned a hard lesson long ago. When evil comes, you cannot wait. You must act fast. Finally, the response came. But it was not just from Admiral Hayes. It was a message sent to every human military ship within 50 light-years. Jake listened to the message. It was short and clear. Every word had weight. All available ships must go to Theta Principia immediately. This is an extinction-level threat. Rules of engagement are total annihilation. No survivors allowed. Jake felt cold fear run through his body. Total annihilation. Those words were rarely used. They were only for the most dangerous situations. The last time humanity used those words was during the Kryn invasion. An alien species had tried to make humans into slaves. That war ended with the complete destruction of the Kryn military. Their entire empire collapsed. Greg looked up from his screen. His face was hard. He had fought in the Battle of New Cambria. That battle was one of the bloodiest in human history. He knew exactly what total annihilation meant. "Commander, long-range sensors show 17 human warships are changing course to join us. They will arrive at Theta Principia in 6 hours. One of them is the dreadnought Ragnarok. Admiral Hayes herself is commanding it." Jake nodded slowly. The Ragnarok was the most powerful warship humanity had ever built. It was like a mobile fortress. It could destroy entire planets if needed. If Admiral Hayes was bringing that monster to the fight, then whoever was attacking the Veltani was going to have a very bad day. Katie stepped closer to Jake. Her voice was low and quiet. She had served with Jake for 3 years. They had been through many battles together. She trusted him completely, but even she seemed worried about how big this response was. "Sir, are we really going in this hard? We do not even know who we are fighting yet. We do not know what they want or why they are doing this." Jake turned to face her. His expression was grim and serious. His hand rested on the metal railing of the command deck. His knuckles were white from gripping it so hard. "The Veltani helped us when we needed it most. They did not ask questions. They did not demand payment. They just helped because it was the right thing to do. Now someone is burning their world. They are killing innocent people. The Velthani are screaming for help. We are going to answer that call, Lieutenant. And whoever thought they could hurt defenseless people is about to learn a very important lesson. Katie met his eyes and nodded. There was nothing more to say. The decision was made. Humanity was coming with everything they had. The Warhammer accelerated to faster than light speed. Jake stared out the viewport. He saw the colors of hyperspace streaming past. They looked like a rainbow mixed with stars. He thought about the Velthani. He remembered their markets full of strange and beautiful things. He remembered their children who had sent hand-drawn pictures to Earth after the plague ended. He remembered the merchant captain who personally delivered medicine to a dying colony. That captain refused to leave until every single person was saved. The Velthani deserved better than this. They deserved to live in peace. And humanity was going to make sure they got that chance. 6 hours until they reached Theta Principia. 6 hours until the universe learned what happened when you hurt the friends of humanity. Jake allowed himself a cold smile. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a warrior going into battle. The galaxy was about to see the anger of Earth's children, and it would not be gentle. Humanity had come from a world that tried to kill them every day. Earth had deadly weather, dangerous animals, and diseases that could wipe out millions. Humans learned to survive by being tougher than everything else. They learned to fight harder than anyone. They learned that sometimes to protect the innocent you had to be absolutely ruthless to the guilty. Jake looked at his crew. Every person on the bridge was focused and ready. Katie was checking weapon systems. Greg was plotting attack vectors. Claire was monitoring all communication channels. They were all professionals. They were all warriors, and they were all ready to do whatever it took to save the Velthani. The ship's computer counted down the time. 5 hours and 50 minutes to arrival. Jake sat in his command chair and waited. He thought about what was coming. He knew this battle would change things. It would send a message to every species in the galaxy. That message was simple. If you hurt the innocent, if you attack the defenseless, humanity will come for you. And when they come, they will not stop until you are gone. The Warhammer raced through hyperspace. Behind it, 17 more warships followed. And at the front of that fleet was the Ragnarok, the most feared ship in human space. Together, they formed an armada of destruction. They were not coming to negotiate. They were not coming to talk. They were coming to end a threat permanently. Somewhere ahead in the Theta Principia system, the attackers had no idea what was coming for them. They thought they were strong. They thought they could do whatever they wanted. They were about to learn how wrong they were. They were about to face humanity. And humanity never forgave those who hurt their friends. High Executor Vornkath stood on the command deck of his flagship. The ship was called Eternal Conquest. It was the pride of the Zarkonian Dominion. Vornkath had 4 eyes that glowed with satisfaction. Below him, the planet Theta Principia was burning. The Velthani colony was being destroyed. Cities were turning into melted metal and ash. He thought it was beautiful. The Zarkonian Dominion had ruled this part of space for 3,000 years. They were old and powerful. They crushed any species that did not obey them. The Velthani had made a mistake. They refused to sign a trade agreement. That agreement would have made them slaves to the Dominion. Vornkath was happy to show them what happened when you said no to the Dominion. Sub-Commander Kraxtor walked toward Vornkath. His claws clicked on the metal floor. Kraxtor was young for his rank. He was ambitious and brutal. Vornkath liked that about him. High Executor, the bombardment is almost done. The Velthani have stopped fighting back. We have killed all their leaders. Vornkath clicked his mandibles together. It was a sign of approval. Another world conquered. Another species brought under Dominion control. The Dominion grew stronger with each victory. Soon even the oldest civilizations would fear their name. Excellent work. Begin taking everything valuable from the planet. I want every resource stripped within 3 days. Then we move to our next target. But before Kraxtor could respond, the sensor officer made a sharp hissing sound. The sound was full of alarm. It cut through the bridge like a knife. Every head turned toward the sensor station. High Executor, we are detecting multiple ships appearing at the edge of the system. They are dropping out of faster-than-light travel. There are many ships. Very many. Vornkath's eyes narrowed. Who would dare come here? The Velthani had no military. None of the nearby species would dare interfere with Dominion business. He moved to the sensor display. His huge body cast a shadow over the smaller officer. Identify them right now. The sensor officer worked frantically. His claws moved across the console very fast. When the data appeared, he became very still. His voice was barely above a whisper. "High Executor, we are detecting 17 vessels. We do not recognize their design. Their power readings are massive, far beyond anything in our database. They are accelerating toward us at incredible speeds." Vornkath felt a small flicker of worry, but he pushed it down. Unknown ships were rare but not impossible. The Dominion had crushed countless unknown species before. These newcomers would be no different. They would learn to fear the Dominion just like everyone else. Turn on all weapons, raise shields to maximum, contact them and demand they leave Dominion space immediately. The communications officer worked quickly. He sent the standard Dominion warning in 37 different languages. The response came back in just seconds. When the translation computer processed it, the entire bridge fell silent. Every officer stopped what they were doing. The voice was human. It was female. It was cold as ice and hard as steel. "This is Vice Admiral Lauren Hayes of the Human Defense Fleet. You are committing genocide against a species under our protection. Your fleet is surrounded. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. You have 1 minute to comply. If you do not, we will destroy you immediately." Vornkath stared at the display. His mandibles twitched. It looked like he was amused. Humans, he had heard of them. They were a young species from a small system far away. They had barely been in space for a few centuries. And they dared to threaten the Zarkonian Dominion? It was laughable, humans, a species of primitives who just learned to fly between stars. Send them a message. Tell them to leave now, or we will add their worlds to our list of conquests. The communications officer sent the message. The response was instant. But it was not in words. On the sensor display, the human ships moved into a perfect attack formation. Their weapons lit up like stars being born. Then, without any warning, they opened fire. The first wave of fire hit a Dominion destroyer called Relentless Fury. The ship simply stopped existing. It was vaporized in less than a second. Kinetic weapons and energy beams hit it all at once. The ship's shields did nothing. They might as well not have been there at all. Vornkath's amusement died instantly. His 4 eyes went wide with shock. He watched as 3 more of his ships disappeared from the display. One after another, they were destroyed. The humans were not just attacking randomly. They were making surgical strikes. They knew exactly where to hit. It spoke of terrible experience. Return fire. All ships engage the enemy now. The Dominion ships obeyed the order. Their plasma cannons and missile batteries fired everything they had. Hundreds of weapons unleashed hell toward the human ships. But the humans simply moved out of the way. Their ships danced through space with impossible agility. Point defense systems shot down every missile. Energy shields absorbed hits that should have destroyed them, and then the humans fired back again. The real nightmare began. Kraxtor stumbled to Vornkath's side. His voice was no longer confident. It was filled with fear. "High Executor, we have lost 7 ships in 5 minutes. Their weapons are cutting through our shields like paper. We need to retreat right now." Vornkath wanted to yell at him. He wanted to order him to stand and fight. But the numbers on the display told a story that pride could not ignore. The Dominion had brought 43 ships to this battle. In less than 5 minutes, they had lost 12. The humans had lost 0. All ships, retreat. Fall back to hyperspace point Delta 7. We will regroup and return with more ships. But as the Dominion ships began to turn away, something appeared on the sensors. It made Vornkath's blood turn to ice. A massive ship dropped out of hyperspace directly in their escape path. It was huge, 3 times bigger than his flagship. The hull was black as the void. Weapons covered every surface. They glowed with barely contained power. The sensor officer's voice shook as he read the ship's name. "High Executor, that ship is called Ragnarok. It is classified as a human dreadnought. Its power signature is beyond anything we have ever seen." The Ragnarok's weapons began to charge. A low hum filled the void of space. It could be felt even across the distance. Admiral Hayes's voice came through the speakers one more time. Her words were final and absolute. "You were warned. You chose to commit violence against innocent people. Now you will face the consequences of your actions." The dreadnought fired its main weapon. The beam was so bright it hurt to look at. It crossed the distance in an instant. When it hit the Eternal Conquest, the flagship's shields flared once and died. The beam cut through the hull like a hot knife through butter. The ship began to break apart. Explosions tore through every deck. The reactor cores lost containment and exploded. Vornkath had just enough time to realize his mistake. He had thought humans were weak. He had thought they were primitive. He had been wrong. The last thing he saw was the bridge around him tearing apart. Then there was nothing but fire and death. The eternal conquest broke in half. Secondary explosions ripped through both pieces. In seconds, the pride of the Zarkonian Dominion was nothing but glowing debris floating in space. Around it, the rest of the Dominion fleet tried desperately to escape. But there was nowhere to run. The humans had them surrounded. And the humans showed no mercy. Ship after ship was destroyed. The Dominion had ruled through fear for 3,000 years. Now for the first time they knew what it felt like to be afraid. They knew what it felt like to face an enemy that was stronger, faster, and more ruthless. They knew what it felt like to be hunted. And across the galaxy, sensors recorded everything. Every species with the technology to see watched as the mighty Zarkonian Dominion was crushed in minutes. They watched as humanity demonstrated what happened when you attacked their friends. The message was clear and terrifying. Humanity would protect those who could not protect themselves. And if you stood in their way, they would erase you from existence. Jake watched from the bridge of the Warhammer as the Ragnarok fired its main weapon. The weapon was amazing. It was a magnetic accelerator that could launch a giant projectile at nearly the speed of light. The tungsten slug weighed over 50 tons. It crossed the distance between the Dreadnought and the Dominion flagship in less than a second. The impact was devastating. The Eternal Conquest shields flared bright and then died completely. The massive ship's hull ruptured. Explosions tore through it in a cascade of fire and metal. Secondary explosions ripped through the interior as the reactor cores lost control. In just seconds, the pride of the Zarkonian Dominion was reduced to glowing pieces of debris floating in space. Greg let out a low whistle from his station. Even he was impressed. He had seen the worst of human warfare. He had fought in battles that killed millions. But the sheer destructive power on display here was beyond anything he had witnessed before. Commander, the enemy fleet is falling apart. They are trying to scatter and run, but our fleet has them boxed in on all sides. Admiral Hayes is broadcasting on all channels. Jake nodded to Claire. She patched the Admiral's transmission through to the bridge speakers. Hayes' voice filled the room. It was calm but merciless, cold and final. All human vessels, you are weapons-free. Use standard annihilation protocols. No quarter given. No mercy shown. Let them remember this day for generations to come. The human fleet moved as one perfect unit. It was like a swarm of angry hornets. Destroyers and frigates broke formation. They chased down fleeing Dominion ships with relentless precision. Cruisers formed firing lines. Their missile batteries launched waves of smart munitions. The missiles hunted their targets through space like predators stalking prey. The Warhammer itself locked onto a Dominion battleship that was trying to reach the edge of the gravity well. Target locked, Commander. Railguns are charged and ready to fire. Jake's voice was ice cold. He had seen the footage from Theta Principia. He had seen the burning cities. He had seen the bodies of Velthani floating in space. The Velthani had been defenseless. These monsters had slaughtered them without any mercy at all. Fire. The Warhammer's twin railguns spoke with thunder. They hurled slugs of depleted uranium at incredible velocity. The Dominion battleship's shields held for exactly half a second before they collapsed completely. The slugs punched through the hull like it was paper. They created massive holes that vented atmosphere and bodies into the void of space. The ship listed to one side. Its engines died. Then a human frigate finished it off with a spread of torpedoes. The battleship exploded in a brilliant flash of light. The battle lasted exactly 18 minutes. When it was over, 31 Zarkonian ships were nothing but debris fields. Twisted metal and frozen bodies floated where proud warships had been. The remaining 12 Dominion ships had been crippled. Their engines were destroyed. Their weapons were offline. They drifted helplessly in space like broken toys. They broadcast frantic distress signals, but no one answered them. Admiral Hayes issued her final order. Her voice echoed across every channel. Every human ship heard it clearly. Finish them. Leave no survivors. The human fleet complied without hesitation. Precision strikes eliminated the crippled ships one by one. They ensured no survivors remained. No witnesses who could speak of mercy or weakness. The message had to be absolute and clear. Attack the defenseless, hurt the innocent, and humanity would erase you from existence. No exceptions. No second chances. As the last Dominion ship exploded in a brilliant flash of fire, Jake felt no satisfaction. He felt no joy in the killing. He only felt a grim sense that duty had been fulfilled, justice had been served. He turned to Katie, who had been monitoring the colony on Theta Principia throughout the entire engagement. What is the status of the Velthani survivors? How many are left alive? Katie's expression was sad. She had been hoping for better news, but the data was clear and honest. They took very heavy casualties, Commander. Most of the major cities are gone. Millions are dead, but we are detecting survivors in the underground shelters. Thousands of them, maybe tens of thousands. They are alive and waiting for help. Jake nodded slowly. It was not a complete victory. Too many had died. But it was enough. The Velthani would survive as a species. They would rebuild their civilization. Humanity would make absolutely sure of it. All ships prepare for orbital support operations. I want medical teams on the surface immediately. Engineering crews need to begin damage assessment of colony infrastructure right now. We are not leaving this system until every single survivor is accounted for and safe. Claire looked up from her console. Her eyes held a question. The fleet had standing orders to return to their patrol routes after military engagements. But Jake was not following the standard protocol. He met her gaze steadily and firmly. Sir, Earth Command is requesting a full status report. They want to know what our next orders are. They want us to report back. Jake thought about the Velthani children who had drawn pictures for Earth. He thought about the merchant captain who had saved an entire colony during the plague. He thought about what it meant to be human. To stand for something greater than yourself, to protect those who could not protect themselves. Tell Earth Command that we are exactly where we need to be. We are doing exactly what we should be doing. As the human fleet moved into stable orbit around Theta Principia, dropships began launching from the carrier vessels. They were not carrying more weapons. They carried doctors and nurses. They carried engineers and construction workers. They carried food, medicine, and building supplies. Humanity had come to this world with weapons of war, but they would stay with hands ready to heal and rebuild. Down on the planet's surface, Velthani survivors emerged from their shelters. They looked up at the sky with fear at first. They expected more destruction, more death. Instead, they saw human ships. They saw dropships landing gently. They saw human soldiers helping pull survivors from rubble. They saw human doctors treating the wounded without asking for anything in return. And somewhere in the depths of space, the message was already spreading like wildfire. The recordings of the battle were being transmitted to every corner of the galaxy. Every species with functioning sensors for 100 light-years had witnessed what happened. They had watched the Zarkonian Dominion attack a peaceful species. They had watched humanity respond with overwhelming force. They had watched the mighty Dominion fleet be completely destroyed in less than 20 minutes. The recordings would be studied carefully. They would be analyzed by military strategists. They would be feared by those who preyed on the weak. Every species in the galaxy was learning a new truth. A truth that would reshape galactic politics forever. Humanity was not to be taken lightly. They were not primitive. They were not weak. They came from a world that tried to kill them every day. They had learned to be tougher than anything nature could throw at them. And now they had brought that toughness to the stars. More importantly, those under humanity's protection were now sacred. Touch them, hurt them, threaten them, and you would face total annihilation. No negotiation, no mercy. Just swift and absolute destruction. The age of human influence had truly begun. The galaxy would never be the same. And in his command chair on the Warhammer, Jake Morrison allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. They had saved the Velthani. They had sent a message to the galaxy. But he knew this was just the beginning. Other threats would come. Other tyrants would need to be stopped. And humanity would be ready. They would always be ready, because that was what humans did. They protected the innocent. They stood against evil. And they never ever gave up. 3 days had passed since the battle. The human fleet still orbited Theta Principia. Down on the surface, engineering crews worked alongside Velthani survivors. They were restoring power grids and water systems. Medical tents had been set up in every settlement. Human doctors worked day and night to treat the wounded. They refused to stop until everyone was cared for. Jake stood in one of those medical tents. He watched as a human doctor carefully treated a young Velthani child. The little one's protective shell had been cracked by falling debris during the bombardment. But the doctor worked with steady, gentle hands. She was applying synthetic grafts that would allow the natural shell to heal properly. The child's parents stood nearby. Their large eyes were wet. It was how the Velthani cried. Katie approached from behind. Her boots made soft sounds on the makeshift floor of the tent. She had been coordinating supply distribution across the entire colony. It was a nightmare of logistics. Thousands of people needed food, water, medicine, and shelter, but somehow Katie had made it all work smoothly. "Commander, we just received a transmission from the Velthani Council. They want to meet with Admiral Hayes and yourself. They are calling it a formal audience. They want to thank us properly," Jake nodded. He tore his eyes away from the medical work. He had been dreading this meeting. What do you say to a species that just watched their world burn? How do you explain that you arrived too late to stop the killing? Yes, they had avenged the dead, but they could not bring them back. 2 hours later, Jake and Admiral Hayes stood in what remained of the Velthani Council chamber. The building had taken a direct hit during the bombardment. Its elegant tall spires were now twisted metal ruins, but the Council had cleared a space in the rubble. They had assembled there, refusing to meet the humans anywhere else. Jake understood. It was a statement. This was their home. Broken though it may be, they would receive visitors here with dignity. Elder Xantira stood at the center of the council group. She was the leader of the Velthani people. She was old even by her species standards. Her protective shell was marked with the scars of a very long life. When she spoke, her voice carried deep grief and gratitude in equal measure. "Admiral Hayes, Commander Morrison, the Velthani people owe you a debt that can never be repaid. You heard our call for help. You came with such overwhelming force that our enemies were swept away like dust in a storm. We are alive today because of you. Our children will live because of your courage." Admiral Hayes stepped forward. Lauren Hayes was a veteran of 30 years of military service. She was a woman who had seen more battles than most people could imagine. She had commanded fleets. She had made impossible decisions. But in that moment, standing before the grieving elder, she spoke with deep humility. "Elder Xantira, we only wish we had arrived sooner. The loss your people have suffered is beyond measure. We cannot undo what happened. We cannot bring back those who died. But we can ensure this never happens again. Humanity stands ready to offer you our protection, our resources, and our friendship for as long as you need us." Xantira's mandibles clicked softly. It was a gesture of acknowledgement and respect. The elder reached out with one of her many jointed limbs. Hayes took it gently in her own hand. It was a simple gesture, but it spoke more than 1,000 words could ever say. "When the Crimson Plague devastated your colonies, we helped because it was the right thing to do. We expected nothing in return. We wanted no payment or reward. Yet you came for us. You brought your mightiest ships. You risked your lives for a people not your own. This is what separates civilized beings from barbarians. This is what makes you worthy of trust. Thank you, Admiral. Thank you, Commander. Thank you, humanity." The meeting concluded with formal agreements. Humanity would provide long-term reconstruction aid. They would establish a permanent defense garrison in the system. They would help rebuild the Velthani civilization from the ashes. But as Jake and Admiral Hayes returned to their shuttle, Jake could not shake a feeling. Something much larger had just shifted in the galaxy. The balance of power was changing. His instincts proved correct. Within 1 week, messages began pouring into Earth from all across the sector. Some were expressions of gratitude from governments. These governments had suffered under Zarkonian aggression for years. Now they saw hope. Others were requests for protection. Many species feared they might be next on the Dominion's list. A few messages were threats from allies of the Dominion. They promised retaliation for the destruction of the Zarkonian fleet. But the most important message came from the Galactic Assembly. The Assembly was a loose coalition of advanced species. It served as the closest thing the galaxy had to a governing body. They had watched the battle at Theta Principia with great interest. Now they wanted answers. They wanted to understand what humanity intended to do next. Jake found himself summoned back to Earth for a classified briefing. He stood in the halls of Defense Command. He was surrounded by admirals and generals, the highest-ranking officers in the human military. They discussed humanity's next moves. The question on everyone's mind was simple but profound. What now? What happens next? Fleet Admiral Carl Bishop addressed the room. He was the highest-ranking officer in the entire human defense fleet. He was a man in his 60s. His hair was gray and his face was stern, but his eyes sparkled with sharp intelligence and decades of experience. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a serious situation developing. The Zarkonian Dominion is not going to let this insult go unanswered. Their empire spans over 300 star systems. We just humiliated them in front of the entire galaxy. Intelligence reports suggest they are massing a massive fleet at their capital world. We are talking about hundreds of ships, maybe even thousands. A murmur ran through the room. The victory at Theta Principia had been decisive and complete. But it had been against a single Dominion fleet. A full-scale invasion by the entire Dominion military was a completely different matter. That was a war that could consume entire star systems. Admiral Hayes stood from her seat. Her voice cut through the worried noise like a sharp blade. She had returned from Theta Principia only hours earlier, but she looked as sharp and ready as ever. With respect, Admiral Bishop, let them come. We have analyzed their technology thoroughly. We have studied their tactics and their strategies. They are 3,000 years old as a civilization, and they have grown complacent and overconfident. They rely on brute force and intimidation. We are a young species, yes. But we have spent our entire history in space at war. We know how to fight. We know how to adapt. And we know how to win. Another admiral leaned forward. This was Admiral Philip Carter. He was the head of naval intelligence. He was a man known for his caution and careful strategic thinking. Admiral Hayes makes a valid and important point, but we cannot ignore basic mathematics. Even if we are technologically superior, they can potentially drown us in sheer numbers. We need allies. The Galactic Assembly has been watching us very carefully. This is our chance to step onto the galactic stage, not as aggressors or conquerors, but as protectors and defenders of freedom. Fleet Admiral Bishop nodded slowly. His fingers drummed on the polished table. The decision he was about to make would shape humanity's future for many generations to come. It would determine whether humans face the galaxy alone or with powerful friends. Very well. We will respond positively to the Galactic Assembly's request. We will send a diplomatic delegation, but we also prepare for war at the same time. If the Dominion wants a fight, we will give them one they will never forget. Commander Morrison, you have proven yourself at Theta Principia. Your actions were exemplary. I am assigning you as the military advisor to our diplomatic delegation. Make sure the other species understand what humanity is truly capable of. Show them our strength, but also our honor. Jake felt the enormous weight of the assignment settle on his shoulders. He was a soldier, not a diplomat. He was trained to fight, not to negotiate. But he understood exactly what was being asked of him. Humanity needed to show strength while extending a hand in friendship. It was a very delicate balance, one that could determine whether they faced the future alone or with allies standing beside them. As the meeting ended and people began to leave, Jake stood at the tall window of the command center. He looked up at the stars above. They twinkled peacefully in the night sky. But he knew the truth. Somewhere out there, the Zarkonian Dominion was preparing for revenge. They were gathering their forces. They were planning their counterattack. And somewhere else in the vast galaxy, ancient and powerful species were watching humanity closely. They were waiting to see what these young, aggressive newcomers would do next. Would humans be conquerors like so many before them? Or would they be something different, something the galaxy desperately needed? The message from Theta Principia had been crystal clear. Humanity would protect the innocent with overwhelming and brutal force. Now it was time to see if that message would be enough to reshape the entire galaxy, or if it would lead to humanity's greatest and most dangerous challenge yet. Jake closed his eyes for a long moment. He thought of the Velthani child being treated in the medical tent. He thought of Elder Xantira's gratitude and grief. He thought of the terrible destruction wrought by the Galactic Assembly convened on the neutral world of Kethera Prime. This planet had been chosen centuries ago for one simple reason. It sat at the crossroads of major trade routes. The assembly hall was a marvel of engineering and cooperation. It was a massive structure that could accommodate representatives from 1,000 different species. Each species had their own special environmental requirements. The building handled them all. Jake stood in the human delegation's preparation chamber. He was adjusting his dress uniform. It felt strange and uncomfortable. He was used to combat armor, not formal clothes. Beside him stood Ambassador Henry Cole. Cole was a career diplomat. He had negotiated humanity's first trade agreements with alien species. Cole was in his 50s. His hair was silver. He looked distinguished and calm, but Jake knew that calm exterior hid a mind as sharp as any weapon. Remember, Commander, we are not here to make threats. We are here to establish humanity as a force for stability and justice in the galaxy. Let me do most of the talking unless they specifically ask about military matters. That is when you step in." Jake nodded. He felt distinctly out of place. He was a warrior, not a politician. But he understood the importance of what they were about to do. Humanity's entire future might well be decided in the next few hours. He could not afford to make mistakes. The massive doors to the assembly hall opened slowly. Jake's breath caught in his throat. The chamber was enormous. It rose hundreds of feet above them. Delegates from across the entire galaxy filled the ascending tiers. Species of every imaginable form were present. Some breathed methane and lived in specially sealed chambers. Others floated in tanks of liquid. A few were completely artificial. They were AI consciousnesses housed in mechanical bodies. At the center of the hall stood the speaker. The speaker was an ancient being from the Keltheran communion. The Keltherans were one of the oldest spacefaring species in the galaxy. They were energy beings. Their forms were barely visible. They looked like shimmering lights contained within crystalline structures. When the speaker addressed the assembly, its voice resonated through every translator at the same time. "We convene this emergency session to address the incident at Theta Principia. The human species has demonstrated significant military capability. They annihilated an entire Zarkonian fleet in under 20 minutes. The Zarkonian Dominion has lodged a formal complaint. They claim the humans acted as unprovoked aggressors. We now call upon Ambassador Cole to respond to these serious charges." Cole stepped forward confidently. His voice was amplified throughout the vast chamber. Jake had to admire the man's composure. Facing a room full of the galaxy's most powerful and ancient species would intimidate anyone, but Cole spoke with calm, steady authority. "Honored speaker, esteemed delegates of the assembly, humanity acted purely in defense of the Velthani people. The Velthani were under brutal attack by the Zarkonian Dominion. The Dominion fleet was engaged in an unprovoked act of genocide. We have provided complete sensor logs and recordings to this assembly. The evidence is absolutely clear and undeniable." A Zarkonian delegate rose angrily from its section. Its 4 eyes glowed with barely contained rage. This was not High Executor Vornkath. He had died aboard the Eternal Conquest. But this was another member of the Dominion's leadership. Its voice was harsh and filled with righteous indignation. "The humans are lying to this assembly. The Velthani colony was within our established sphere of influence. Their refusal to acknowledge our legitimate authority was an act of rebellion. We were completely within our rights to suppress that rebellion with force. The humans had no jurisdiction and no right whatsoever to interfere in Dominion internal affairs." Cole did not even flinch. He had anticipated exactly this argument. He had prepared his response very carefully with his advisors. The Dominion claims a sphere of influence, but the Velthani are a sovereign and independent species. They never signed any treaty acknowledging Dominion authority. They never agreed to become subjects. The attack was completely unprovoked and brutally executed. Humanity answered a legitimate distress call from an allied species. That is not aggression. That is the fundamental duty of all civilized peoples. The chamber erupted into loud discussion. Delegates conferred frantically with their advisors. Voices rose in dozens of different languages. The translation system struggled to keep up. The speaker allowed the heated debate to continue for several minutes. Then it called firmly for order. The human response raises a fundamental and important question. What responsibility do we, the members of this ancient assembly, have to protect species who cannot defend themselves? The Dominion has operated with complete impunity for 3 millennia. They have expanded through brutal conquest and intimidation. Yet until now, no one has directly challenged them. The question we must ask ourselves is simple. Why not? A delegate from the Zarian collective rose to speak. The Zarians were a species of insectoid beings. They were known throughout the galaxy for their philosophical nature and deep thinking. The delegate's voice was melodic and almost musical. "We did not challenge the Dominion because the cost would have been too high. The Dominion military is vast and powerful. To oppose them would require enormous resources and countless lives. Lives that none of us were willing to sacrifice. The humans have shown us that it can be done. But at what ultimate cost? Are they truly prepared for the massive retaliation that will surely come?" The speaker turned its shimmering form toward Jake. He suddenly felt the weight of 1,000 eyes upon him. Every species in the chamber was watching, waiting to hear what he would say. "Commander Morrison, You commanded the first human vessel to engage the Dominion fleet. You have seen their capabilities firsthand in direct combat. You have analyzed their tactics and strategies. Can humanity truly stand against an empire that controls 300 worlds? Jake stepped forward. His heart was pounding hard in his chest. This was the moment that truly mattered. Not the diplomatic niceties or careful words, but the raw, honest truth of humanity's strength and determination. He thought about the burning cities of Theta Principia. He thought about the Velthani children. He thought about what it meant to be human. Honored speaker, yes, we absolutely can. The Dominion fleet at Theta Principia outnumbered us more than 2 to 1. They were completely destroyed in 18 minutes without a single human casualty. We carefully analyzed their technology during the engagement. They rely on outdated shield systems. They use predictable tactics that have not changed in centuries. They have an arrogance born from facing no real opposition for 3,000 years. He paused deliberately. He let his words sink in. The chamber had gone completely silent. Every delegate was hanging on his words. Humanity is young by galactic standards. We have only been in space for a few hundred years. But we come from a world that tried to kill us every single day of our existence. Earth is what we call a death world. Gravity 1.5 times galactic standard. Weather patterns that can level entire cities in hours. Predators at every level of the food chain. Diseases that can wipe out millions. We did not evolve to be diplomatic or patient. We evolved purely to survive against impossible odds. Jake's voice grew harder and more forceful. He was no longer just speaking to the assembly. He was speaking to the Dominion, to every species that thought humanity was weak, simply because they were new to the stars. And then we turned that survival instinct outward to the stars. In our short history in space, we have fought 3 major wars and countless smaller conflicts. We learned to build weapons that could literally crack moons in half. We developed tactics that our own strategists honestly describe as controlled madness. We trained every single citizen to fight if necessary. Because on Earth, peace was always temporary. Conflict was the norm. He looked directly at the Zarkonian delegate. His eyes were cold and hard as steel. So yes, honored speaker, we can absolutely stand against the Dominion. And if they come for us, if they come for our allies, we will do to them exactly what we did at Theta Principia. We will erase them from existence. Not because we want to, not because we enjoy violence, but because that is what we do to those who prey on the defenseless and the innocent. That is the lesson Earth taught us through millions of years of brutal evolution. The silence in the chamber was absolute and profound. Even the Zarkonian delegate seemed genuinely taken aback by the sheer conviction and determination in Jake's words. This was not an empty boast or a hollow threat. It was a solemn promise. A promise backed by the smoking remains of 43 Dominion warships. The speaker's crystalline form flickered rapidly. It was a sign of very deep thought among the Keltherans. Commander Morrison, your words are noted and recorded. Ambassador Cole, humanity's position is crystal clear to all present. This assembly will now deliberate carefully on this matter. But I will say this now, in 3,000 years of recorded galactic history, no species has ever spoken so plainly and honestly about their willingness to fight and die for others. That is either the absolute height of nobility and honor, or the depths of dangerous foolishness. Only time will tell which it truly is. The assembly session ended, but Jake knew the real negotiations were just beginning. Over the next 3 days, various delegations approached the humans in private meetings. Some offered lucrative trade agreements, others proposed military alliances. A few species, inspired by humanity's bold example, publicly announced they would no longer tolerate Dominion aggression in their sectors of space. The balance of power was shifting, but the Zarkonian Dominion remained ominously silent. Their massive fleet continued to gather at their capital world. It grew larger with each passing day. Intelligence reports suggested they were preparing for something unprecedented. Not just a strike against humanity, but a massive offensive against every species that had spoken out against them. This would be a war of total domination. On the final day of the assembly gathering, something unexpected happened. The speaker summoned Jake and Cole to a private chamber deep within the assembly hall. When they arrived, they found representatives from 7 other species already waiting. Among them was Elder Xantira of the Velthani. Her presence surprised Jake. She had traveled all this way despite her world still being in ruins. The speaker's voice filled the small chamber. It was grave and serious, more serious than Jake had ever heard it. A new era begins today in our galaxy. These species gathered here have agreed to form a defensive alliance. Humanity will be at its core. We are calling it the Coalition for Galactic Protection. Its purpose is simple and clear: to defend those who cannot defend themselves, to oppose tyranny and oppression wherever it appears, to ensure that what happened to the Velthani never happens to anyone again. Ambassador Cole looked genuinely stunned. This was beyond anything they had hoped for. A formal alliance with multiple species, mutual defense pacts, shared military resources. It was everything humanity needed to stand against the Dominion threat. But Jake felt a grim satisfaction rather than joy. This was what they had come for, not just to defend one world, but to fundamentally change the galaxy itself. The Dominion will come for us, Jake said quietly but firmly. When they do, it will not be a simple battle. It will be total war. They will throw everything they have at us. Are your people truly ready for that level of conflict? The speakers, crystalline form, pulsed with what might have been determination or agreement. It was hard to tell with the Keltherans. Then let it be war, Commander Morrison, but this time the Dominion will not face the weak and the divided. They will not face isolated species fighting alone. They will face the united. They will face those who fight for something far greater than mere conquest or expansion. And they will finally learn what it means to challenge those who stand for justice and freedom. Elder Xantira stepped forward. Her aged voice was soft but filled with steel. My people have suffered greatly. We have lost millions. Our cities lie in ruins, but we are not broken. We will rebuild. And when we do, we will stand with humanity. We will stand with all who oppose tyranny. The Dominion thought they could crush us into submission. Instead, they have created something they should truly fear: unity born from shared suffering. As Jake and Cole left the private chamber, they passed a large viewport. It showed the stars stretching endlessly into the black void. Out there, somewhere in the darkness, the Dominion was preparing their revenge. They were gathering their fleets. They were planning their strategies. They were confident in their power and their history of victory. But humanity was preparing too. And now, so were their allies. 7 species had joined the coalition. More would follow as word spread. The galaxy was tired of living in fear. They were tired of watching the strong prey upon the weak. Humanity had shown them that resistance was possible, that victory was achievable, that tyranny could be defeated. Jake thought about everything that had happened since that first distress call. It seemed like a lifetime ago, but it had only been 2 weeks. 2 weeks since they received the Velthani SOS. 2 weeks since humanity had responded with overwhelming force. 2 weeks since everything changed forever. The distress call from Theta, Principia, had transformed from a simple rescue mission into a galactic movement. Humanity had answered an SOS with a fleet of total annihilation. In doing so, they had shown the entire galaxy that there were still those willing to stand against evil, that there were still those who valued justice over profit, that there were still those who would fight for others even at great personal cost. Back on Earth, preparations were already underway. Shipyards worked around the clock building new warships. Training centers overflowed with volunteers eager to join the defense fleet. Scientists developed new weapons and better shields. Tacticians studied every piece of data from the Theta Principia battle, looking for ways to improve their already devastating effectiveness. Katie sent Jake a private message. She was still on Theta Principia, coordinating the reconstruction efforts. Her words were simple but powerful. Commander, you should see what is happening here. Humans and Velthani are working side by side, building together, learning from each other. The children are playing together despite not speaking the same language. This is what we are fighting for. Not territory or resources, but the right of all beings to live in peace without fear. Jake smiled as he read the message. Katie understood. She always had. War was not about destroying enemies. It was about protecting friends. It was about making sure that children could play without fear of bombs falling from the sky. It was about ensuring that peaceful species could trade and prosper without tribute to tyrants. The Zarkonian Dominion had ruled through fear for 3,000 years. They had built their empire on the backs of conquered species. They had grown fat and comfortable in their power. They believed themselves invincible, untouchable, the masters of their domain. But fear was a weapon that could cut both ways. The Dominion had spent millennia making others afraid. Now, for the very first time in their long and brutal history, they had something to genuinely fear themselves. They had awakened humanity. And humanity, as the galaxy was rapidly learning, was exceptionally good at war. More than that, humans fought with a passion and intensity that came from their brutal evolutionary history. They came from a world that tried to kill them constantly. They had survived ice ages and plagues. They had endured predators and natural disasters. They had evolved not just to survive, but to overcome any challenge through sheer determination and innovation. And now, they had brought all of that to the stars. Every tactical doctrine humanity developed was informed by thousands of years of constant warfare on Earth. Every weapon they built incorporated lessons learned from fighting in every possible environment. Every soldier they trained carried the genetic memory of ancestors who refused to give up even when facing impossible odds. Jake stood on the observation deck of the transport ship carrying him back to Earth. He looked out at the swirling colors of hyperspace. Somewhere beyond that chaotic beauty, the future was being written. It was a future that would be determined by courage and sacrifice, by determination and unity, by the willingness to stand up and say no to evil, regardless of the cost. Ambassador Cole joined him at the viewport. The older man looked tired but satisfied. "Do you think we are ready for what is coming, Commander? The Dominion will not make the same mistakes twice. They will study our tactics. They will prepare countermeasures. The next battle will not be as easy as Theta Principia." Jake considered the question carefully. He thought about his crew, about the Warhammer and all the other ships in the fleet, about the coalition they had just formed, about the Velthani children playing in the ruins of their cities, unafraid because humans stood guard above. "No, Ambassador, it will not be easy. It will be hard and bloody. We will lose ships and people we care about, but we will win. Do you know why? Because we are fighting for something real. The Dominion fights for conquest and power. We fight for the right of peaceful beings to exist without fear. That difference, that fundamental purpose, makes us stronger than any fleet they can assemble." Cole nodded slowly. He understood. He had spent his entire career trying to build bridges between species. Now he was part of something much larger, a coalition built not on treaties and trade, but on shared values and mutual protection. The transport ship continued its journey through hyperspace. Behind it, the Galactic Assembly was in chaos. Some species were joining the coalition. Others were hedging their bets, trying to stay neutral. A few were openly siding with the Dominion, hoping to benefit from what they saw as the coming human defeat. But none of that mattered now. The die was cast. The battle lines were drawn. The galaxy was dividing into two camps: those who believed in freedom and justice, and those who believed in power and domination. The coming war would determine which philosophy would shape the future of galactic civilization. Jake looked at the stars one final time before heading to his quarters. His reflection stared back at him from the viewport. He looked older somehow. The last 2 weeks had aged him, but his eyes were clear and determined. He knew what was coming. He knew the price that would have to be paid, but he also knew it was worth it. Every sacrifice, every battle, every loss, all of it was worth it if it meant creating a galaxy where species like the Velthani could live in peace, where children could grow up,